Are your people working hard but not reaching their full potential? The problem is not effort, it is development. At the Modern Observer Group, we transform workforce development into real performance. Our human-centered achievement programs help your team think better, communicate stronger, and execute at a higher level. That means higher employee engagement, stronger leadership, and measurable results across your organization. If you want a workforce that performs, leads, and delivers, it is time to invest in your people. Visit modernobserver.com and discover how the Modern Observer Group helps you build a workforce that wins.
Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase, the podcast that helps you succeed in your business life and career. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group, and with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. You know, we've been off for a couple of weeks between Memorial Day and summer kicking in. We're almost to the official start of summer. So it really is an amazing time of year. And while we were gone, just actually a few days ago, history was made. And we are recording this on June 15th, but on June 12th, we had the world's history's largest initial public offering for a company, that company being SpaceX. And what makes it really amazing is not just that the IPO, it was the largest in history. It's the fact that 4,400 people approximately became millionaires and multimillionaires at the moment it went public. And we're not talking about Wall Street financiers who became rich. Elon Musk, who owns the company, obviously he actually became the world's first trillionaire. But those millionaires and multimillionaires were folks that worked for a living. These are current and former employees of SpaceX, welders, engineers, people that just went to work each day, took stock options as part of their pay package, and it paid off like they never imagined. And one of the things that sets all of these people apart, and one of the reasons they were at SpaceX, was because they had a work ethic. This is something Elon Musk's work ethic is legendary, to the point where stories are told where he sleeps in the office when big projects are due so that he can keep working through the night. Well, you don't necessarily have to do that. But today we're going to be talking about how you can build and improve your work ethic. And of course, why it's so important to have a work ethic.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that happened last week. It's I mean, us growing up, we're making a couple $1,000s back in the 60s or 70s, and to thinking of trillionaires. You know, back then, if you became a millionaire, it was like, wow. Now, you know, it's just commonplace. But yeah, I mean, building a work ethic, it's so important. And basically, it comes down to being consistent, establishing a predictable routine, just like you're talking about Elon Musk, setting high standards. Basically, it's a reflection. Your ethic is a reflection of your beliefs and standards that you hold yourself to. Eliminating distractions, taking absolute ownership of everything that you do, and surrounding yourself with other driven people. It's find running mates and so on and so forth. And obviously there's a whole lot of rich ones in that company now. So.
Absolutely. So let's start with setting clear standards. You know, that's something that's so important. And you can build your work ethic or enhance your existing work ethic by starting with clear standards. Take a look at what you're doing, whatever the task is. And it's not necessarily just about work. This can be around the house, this can be at school, whatever it is that you're doing. And think about, what is it that defines good work? What does that look like in your role? And when you figure out what it is that good work should look like, and this is going to encompass quite a lot of things. Things like showing up on time, meeting deadlines, communicating clearly, finishing what you say you're going to do. And, it all puts together into what good work really looks like. So the first thing you really need to do is define what good work looks like for your role. And then you need to commit to actually doing good work. Live up to the standards that you've just put together. When you have those standards, it actually makes performance easier because you know what you're aiming for. You can measure your progress. You know how to improve it. So start with putting together those clear standards as to what good work looks like.
Yeah, and a lot of it starts with just preparation for your day, preparation for your meetings, your projects in advance, and so on and so forth. Because a lot of people, the standards aren't just showing up on time. But if you really want to contribute and be proactive, you have to do your homework ahead of time and come in prepared.
Yeah, preparation is also so important. So many people will say, oh, I just fly by the seat of my pants. I just take things as they come. Well, you know what? The folks that do that the best actually prepare ahead of time. They're not really flying by the seat of their pants. They know what to expect because they've done it over and over again. So yes, preparation is key. Take some time. Understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. What is going to be the effect of that accomplishment? And what I mean by that is, how are people going to see what you've done? How is it going to improve things for them? When you see that effect, it helps build your motivation. And if you're more motivated to do good work, it helps you meet those standards that we just talked about putting together.
Yeah, and another way to be better prepared and set high standards, and we talk about this a lot, is the structuring your workflow. And this is working off of a checklist, prioritizing using the 80-20 rule, breaking down large projects into smaller steps, prioritizing things. But obviously, if you want to be structured, planning your workflow is really, really important.
Yes, you need to make those plans ahead of time. Figure out what you need to keep yourself moving forward. And even better, do these over and over again. Because once you've put these operations into practice, when you repeat them, when you do it over and over, it becomes a habit. And then when you make do those habits consistently, that's one of the strongest foundations of a work ethic, because you're not actually stopping to think, okay, how do I do this? What do I have to do? What is going to make this good? When you're doing it over and over again, you develop that strong work ethic when you create those daily habits that support productivity and responsibility. What you are doing, what you say you're going to accomplish, the fact that you actually follow through is critical, because that is at the core of doing good work and having a work ethic. Because if you take on a responsibility and then don't follow through, well, people aren't going to feel they can depend on you. But when you make a habit out of accomplishing things, then people know, hey, if you say you're going to do something, it's going to get done. So when you put these plans together, utilize them over and over. It doesn't matter what the project is. It could be a major project for work. It could be something simple like doing the dishes after dinner. Whatever it is, put together your processes and do them day after day so that they become habits. And the power of habit is truly powerful. There are numerous books. The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, Atomic Habits, blanking on the author of that one, but it's another incredible book. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list, I think going on 6 years now. So it's truly important to build those habits.
Yeah, absolutely. And taking ownership is what you're talking about, taking absolute ownership of what you're doing. Accountability is a core pillar of work ethic. Basically, own your successes, but more importantly, you take responsibility for everything that you do, including all of your mistakes, so that you can learn from them and improve. So you have to be your authentic self through this whole thing, and obviously being prepared ahead of time and doing the things that we talked about as far as the routines and so on and so forth are so important. But ownership, accountability is so important, because people will see right through you if they think that if they see that you're just doing something to get it done or whatever, if you have an agenda other than what the agenda should be.
Definitely. Ownership is key. And, a lot of people make a mistake when they talk about ownership and accountability. This is not something that you can do for someone else. You can't really hold somebody else accountable, no matter how many times you hear that phrase. The only person that can hold you accountable is you. And you have to dedicate yourself to taking ownership of everything you do. If something does not work, look at what was done. What could you have done to make it work better? Now, something that needs to be clarified: being accountable is not the same as blame. Blame is negative. Blame is you're trying to find somebody to say, well, it's your fault. Accountability is looking at what you did, figuring out how you could have done it better, and if you made a mistake, owning up to it and taking steps not to make that mistake again. Another great book on this topic, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Jocko Willink was a Navy SEAL, and he talked about doing missions in special forces. And when things took a turn for the worse, when something went wrong during a special missions tactic, it's a lot more deadly than what most of us deal with on a day-to-day basis. So he learned accountability and held his men to that, held himself to it, to the point where he tells the story in the book of one mission that went horribly wrong. And when their superior officers came down to go over everything and see what went wrong and who did what to cause it, almost his entire team came forward saying, it was my fault. I didn't do XYZ. And after they said that, he actually said, no, it's not any of your fault. I was in command of the mission. It was my error that caused this. I was not clear enough. I did not make the objective crystal clear to everybody. The blame falls with me. It is rare for an entire team to hold themselves accountable like that. But that's what a work ethic looks like. You're not trying to blame somebody else when things go wrong. You accept that things can go wrong and look to fix it. Fix the problem, not the blame. But again, you can't hold other people accountable. You can only hold yourself accountable. So by taking ownership, that is a cornerstone of a strong work ethic.
The one thing you can do to make sure that those relationships are good with the people that you have is surrounding yourself with other driven people. Call them running mates, colleagues, mentors, or peers who challenge you and share your dedication to personal professional growth. This can be within your job or profession or within life itself. I know that you have a lot of networks that you belong to where you share a lot of these principles also, but surrounding yourself with driven people is going to help out a whole lot, because it'll make all these difficult tasks a whole lot easier to accomplish, because everybody knows that you're on the same team. And the bottom line is, as a team, you develop momentum. And a lot of us who are sports fans can see that happening, where you see the biggest underdogs in the world come out on top just because they're a team.
Definitely. And another part of being accountable is also never assuming that you know everything. Never assuming that there's no room for improvement. I actually just completed a workforce development program for an organization that I've actually worked with for a long time. Now, the team that I was working with for this workforce development is a top team. They do their work incredibly well. But they knew that there was always room for improvement. So when we did our workforce development programs, they didn't assume they knew everything, although they did know most of what I was teaching them. There were things that came up that they hadn't known about or knew something about, but not completely. There was one incident during one of the sessions where I was discussing the Eisenhower matrix and how to prioritize what you're doing. And one of the people in the course actually stopped and said, that's what their old boss was doing. He'd seen it a dozen times, but never knew what it was. So there's always room to improve. There's always more to learn. So never assume that you know everything. I just had a conversation with someone who was a U.S. Army, and during basic training, he talked about the fact that learning to fire the gun, they laid in the mud for hours upon hours. And he did not take it seriously. He was 18 years old at the time, thought he knew everything, and could not imagine how what they were doing was going to help him. Well, because of this, he almost flunked out of basic training. And he realized what it was they were trying to teach him, because they weren't teaching him how to shoot the gun. They were teaching him how to be patient, how to aim, how to make the gun part of himself, and how to make this all a habit, so that if they did go into combat when everything was chaotic, he wasn't going to have to think about these things. It was already going to be ingrained in him, which goes back to what we were just talking about creating the habits. You want to be doing all of this before you need it, because when you build all of these things, so that it becomes second nature, so that it becomes a habit. When a deadline hits, when there's a fire that needs to be put out, you already know what you need to do, and it becomes instinct.
Yeah, basically a lot of this comes up to establishing your own consistent routines. So you talked about the training, but in the workplace, establishing routines where you're predictable, people can count on you showing up, being on time, being there prepared all the time. It's so important. For a lot of people, it's the night before, preparing a list of what you're doing tomorrow. And obviously, no matter what you're doing, be fully present. So show up at work, focus entirely on work, avoid checking your phones and all this other kind of thing. So these personal habits of being distracted by things, or just not being there 75% instead of 100%. If you can establish consistent routines so that you are 100% on everything that you're doing, and you don't have to pick a lot of them, just a few of them, but if you can fine tune those, other good habits will flow from those also.
Yes, they will. And another cornerstone of all of this is discipline. Discipline is a major part of a work ethic. And just to be clear about what we're talking about, discipline means that you're doing what needs to be done, even if you're not motivated to do it. We all have been at work and we know we've got a task we've got to do, and we're distracted by surfing the internet. A text comes in and we decide to check it immediately, constantly checking email. Discipline is about focusing on what you're doing. And one of the greatest ways to build discipline is start small. Set up small commitments and make sure you keep them. Over time, those small wins are going to create self-trust. You're going to believe in yourself that, yes, you can do this. And others are going to see that you're doing what you said you were going to do, even if it's a small task, and they're going to have more faith in you. And the more you keep a promise to yourself, the stronger that work ethic becomes. So you have to work on your discipline. And that means not checking your phone 20 times a day just for the sake of checking it. Not always checking your email. Focus on what you're doing. We've talked a lot about multitasking and how it does not work. Your brain does not actually multitask. When you're doing what you think is multitasking, your brain is switching from task to task. And every time you switch, there's a loss of productivity. There's a loss of motivation that you have to build back to. So create the discipline to do one thing at a time, do what you say you're going to do, and let's not, make this mistake. Being disciplined does not mean taking on every task. If you know you're not going to be able to complete a task, either because you don't have the necessary skills, or you don't have the time because you have too much else in your schedule, there is nothing wrong with saying, I cannot do that at this time. I don't have the bandwidth for it. We all get requests that we don't have time to fulfill. There's nothing wrong with saying that at the get-go. I would love to help you with that. I just don't have the time right now. I'm too overwhelmed with what I'm already doing. That's a much better outcome than saying you're going to do it and then not following through.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, talking about the self-discipline, we talked earlier about working off of checklists and the different things that you were just talking about. But one of our favorite books that we've talked about a couple of times, as far as prioritizing that checklist, is a book called Eat That Frog. And
Yeah.
that is taking a look at your to-do list and starting your day with the most difficult and daunting task that you have to do. And once you get that out of the way, you're not going to have much worse things to do the rest of that day. And that will actually send you on a momentum road. And it's a great way to avoid procrastination. Basically, it's like the Nike thing, just do it. If you have the list in front of you, pick out the most daunting thing on there and just do it.
Yes, that's so true. Eat That Frog is written by Brian Tracy. And by the way, going back a second, Atomic Habits is by James Clear. So if you're looking for any of these books, knowing who wrote them will make it a little easier for you. But yes, taking on your most challenging task. Now, I've talked a lot about this, that I tend to disagree with the fact that Eat This Frog works for everybody. You have to understand how you work best. If you're a morning person, yes, you want to eat that frog. You want to get that challenging task done right away because that's when you're at your peak. If you peak later in the afternoon, you want to be doing that challenging task later in the afternoon when you're operating at peak performance. You want to understand how you work best and schedule your most challenging tasks to coincide with that. Otherwise, you're draining your motivation and you're draining your energy. So you really do need to understand how you work. And part of understanding how you work is knowing what you're good at. And another part of building your work effort is improving those skills. Just because you're good at something doesn't mean you know it all. You should keep improving those skills. And, when people get better at what they do, they usually become more confident. Definitely become more efficient and they get more engaged at it. If you're doing something you're not good at, there's always that voice in the back of your head. Oh, I can't wait till I get this over with. Oh, I'm not good at this. Learn how to do these things, learn new tools, study successful people, see how they do things, and seek out mentors and coaches to help you out. Practice. No star athlete ever walked onto a court or a field cold and performed well. They practice day in, day out. Whatever it is that you're trying to learn, you need to practice that too. And practice intentionally. Focus on it. Focus on enhancing your performance. And also learn new skills, things that you're not just not good at, you don't know how to do it. Because as you do that, you're building up your muscles. You're building up those skills. And the more you can do, the more you're comfortable with, the more that becomes, I'm repeating myself again and again, but it becomes habit. And the easier the habit is for you, the stronger your work ethic is, because you're not fighting to build it. It's natural. So one other thing that you really need to keep in mind is that building up your work ethic is like building a muscle. You're doing a workout. And just like a workout, you need to balance that effort with recovery time. You need to schedule time to rest and balance. Having a strong work ethic doesn't mean you need to burn yourself out. It means taking sustained, responsible effort and taking time off to let your brain relax, to let your body relax, to enjoy things. Because when you balance that out, yes, you come back stronger, you build a better work ethic, but you avoid burnout. And that also helps you build credibility and trust, because the more you do this, the more people see you're going to do this, and the more they understand they can give you that tough assignment and you will get it done. So we are just about at the end of our time. Chip, what do you think the big takeaway for this week is?
Well, as a lot of you know who listen often, when you send me a topic, I usually go directly to AI to see what they have to say about it. And today's topic was the power of work ethic, how you can build or reinforce one. And I love what they came up with. A strong work ethic is your ultimate multiplier. That's a beautiful word. It
Yes.
translates core values like integrity, dependability, and discipline into consistent, high-quality output. It builds an undeniable reputation, accelerates skill acquisition, and consistently beats raw talent by turning up every day to compound small, steady improvements. Compound steady improvements.
And that really does sum it up. Having a strong work ethic means you're going back day in, day out, and getting the job done. It builds trust, it builds credibility, and people see that. And people tend to gravitate to folks about at their own skill levels. So when you're building that work ethic, you're going to be sought out by better people because they know you can work well together. You can do more. This is how those 4,400 now millionaires ended up at SpaceX, because they did the work, they learned the skills, and they put it in and day out to do what nobody has ever done in history. And I'm not just talking about the IPO, I'm talking about the fact that SpaceX now has the ability to launch a rocket, bring it back, catch it, and reuse the rocket. This was something that prior to SpaceX was unheard of. And it was done not by one man, but by these thousands of people putting in the work and getting things done. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Success Showcase podcast wherever you find podcasts. And of course, you can catch every episode of Success Showcase at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.